You ever have one of those mornings where the air feels just right, like the world's trying to remind you how things are supposed to be? That's how it started for me. I'd been up since before sunrise, the ranch so quiet I could hear my own boots scuffing on gravel. There was a little mist rolling off the east pasture horses, flicking their tails and puffing out white clouds as they nibbled on winter grass. And for a second, it really did feel like everything was balanced. You know, like my grandfather was out there somewhere watching, making sure I didn't screw it all up. I was tightening the last bolt on the new automatic gate, the kind with a keypad and a heavy steel arm. Nothing fancy, just practical when I heard the rumble of engines. Not the soft clatter of an old Ford, not the school bus with its squeaky brakes and laughing kids. No, this was something official. The kind of convoy you only see when there's bad news coming down the driveway. Now look, this road had been in my family since before most folks in town were born. My granddad used to tell me stories about hauling fence posts down this stretch when he was a teenager, said the only thing that ever used it was his old pickup and the occasional deer. But lately, commercial trucks hauling trash to the county landfill, cutting through our place like it was the main highway, leaving behind ruts so deep you'd lose a boot if you weren't careful, and every once in a while a chunk of busted glass or a scrap of metal that'd spook the horses. So the gate wasn't about politics or being neighborly, it was about keeping my family's place safe. I'd checked the deed, called the county, twice made sure every line was straight. 70 years my family had been here 70, and never once was there a question about whose road this was. But that morning as the convoy rolled in, I had this sinking feeling that the rules had changed overnight and nobody bothered to tell me. The police cruiser led the way, of course, lights off, but presence felt behind it, a slick black Mercedes sedan and a couple SUVs with tinted windows. When the Mercedes stopped out, stepped Margaret Henderson Maggie, to everybody who'd lived here long enough to know better. Impeccably dressed early in the morning, expensive handbag swinging from her wrist like she owned the sun and half the sky. She'd been HOA president for going on 8 years, the kind of woman who could get a stop sign moved with a phone call. 3 board members followed behind her, all with that grim look people wear when they've come to ruin your day. Then came Officer Michael Johnson, and that almost broke me because Mike and I went back. 20 years he'd been to my house for barbecues, patted Emma on the head when she was just a toddler. Always called me Jack. Never Sir or Mr. Thompson. "Morning!" Jack Maggie called out like she was about to drop off a casserole instead of a legal threat. "I'm sorry we have to meet under these circumstances, but we have a serious legal issue to address." She gestured at my brand new gate. "This installation is blocking County Road 47B, which takes precedence over any private property concerns you might have." I looked from the gate back to her, and it must have shown on my face because for a second she hesitated, like maybe she was second-guessing her own nerve. "County Road 47B. I said slow. "Maggie, this is private property. My family's had this land for over 70 years. This road runs right through the heart of it." I reached in my back pocket and pulled out the deed, old paper folded so many times it was starting to tear at the creases. "Everything's here. You want documentation? I got it." Mike stepped forward, trying to keep the peace, I guess. "Jack, I get it, but I gotta go by what the county records and GPS say." He opened his citation book, apologetic but determined. "According to our systems, this is County Road 47B. Blocking public road access is a misdemeanor. I'm going to have to issue you a $500 fine for obstruction, and you'll need to take the gate down within 24 hours or there'll be more trouble." That hit hard. $500 wasn't pocket change for us. And the idea of being arrested me in my own driveway, well, it made me sick. I looked closer at the new road sign, hadn't been there the day before I was sure of it. Fresh metal bright bolts, the paint so new it practically glowed. "Mike," I said, a little desperate now, "you've been out here for years. You ever notice a county road sign before today?" He hesitated, pen in the air. "Can't say that I have, Jack, but GPS has it and Maggie's got the paperwork." Maggie produced a folder thick with documents. "Some kind of emergency designation from 2019, she said, all for proper access for emergency services." She smiled the way people do when they think they've got the law on their side. "Sometimes rural road classifications change as the county develops, Jack. You know how it is. While Mike flipped through the stack, Maggie wandered a few steps away to take a call. I only caught pieces. Something about her mother's care facility being expensive paperwork, needing a signature, and not being able to delay the development timeline any further. She shot me a sharp look when she realized I was listening, then turned her back. That's about when Emma burst out the front door, backpack slung over one shoulder, piece of toast in hand, still rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Dad, what's going on?" "Why are there cops out here?" she asked, voice tight. I tried to keep my voice steady. "There's a misunderstanding about the road, sweetheart. Officer Johnson says we need to take the gate down while we sort it out." Her face fell. All that teenage hope drained away. The gate was her safety, meant she could ride her horse without worrying about some dump truck barreling through. Helen was watching from the kitchen window, mouthing what's happening as if I had answers. But I didn't, not anymore. Officer Johnson finished writing the ticket, handed it to me with a sigh. "Jack, I'd get your own lawyer. Sometimes these lines aren't as simple as they look. But I'll do some digging myself. Something about this doesn't sit right." Maggie and her crew got back in their cars, satisfaction radiating from their faces. "Thank you for your cooperation, Jack," she said, loud enough for Helen and Emma to hear. "The community appreciates property owners who respect public access rights." Her Mercedes rolled away, sunlight glinting off the chrome. I watched her go, stomach clenched. All those years as HOA president, and the $45,000 salary wasn't supposed to buy Italian leather purses, not out here. But who was I to judge, except now I was standing on my own land, a citation in my hand, and a gate that was suddenly a symbol of something much bigger. After the convoy left, I stared at that spotless new sign, blue and white, crisp edges, bolts that still smelled like the hardware store. My grandfather's last words rattled in my head. He'd told me right before he died that there was hidden value on this land, enough to take care of our family forever. Back then, I thought he meant memories, roots, the kind of value you can't measure. Now I was starting to wonder, if County Road 47B was real, there'd be a paper trail. If it was fake, someone was trying to steal more than a road. I snapped a picture of the sign, logged the bolt markings just in case. The next morning, with a heavy heart, I started taking down the gate. Helen handed me tools, quiet as snowfall. Neither of us could say what we were really feeling, but it was like giving up something sacred. "Wouldn't your grandfather have mentioned a county road?" Helen asked, voice shaking. "He'd never miss something like that," I said. "Not in a million years." Before I could finish, Maggie's Mercedes came rolling up again, phone out, recording. "I want to thank you publicly for doing the right thing, Jack," she announced, broadcasting me to her followers. "Cooperation with County Road Access protects the whole community." That video went viral in our small county. By nightfall, I was the entitled rancher on everyone's feed, the guy who blocked public roads. Emma came home from school, eyes red, jaw clenched. "Dad, everyone's talking about us. They're saying we think we're better than everybody else." Jessica's mom had shared the video with a comment, "Some people need to learn their place." That stung more than the fine. 3 of our horseboarding clients called to cancel, not wanting to be caught up in legal troubles. The feed store owner, who'd known me for years, treated me like I was radioactive. The insurance agent called mortgage officer, too. Suddenly, our family business was on the verge of collapse, not because of a road, but because I'd challenged the wrong people. Helen and I fought for the first time in years. "Maybe we just let it go," she said. "This isn't worth losing everything. Think about Emma." I understood, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was letting my grandfather down, letting my whole family down. If I was wrong, then he'd been wrong for 70 years. That just didn't add up. Then the phone rang. "Bill Mitchell retired from the County Roads Department. Jack, I've been thinking about what you said. County Road 47B doesn't exist in any of my files, not master plans, not maintenance, not budget. And one more thing. You remember Maggie's mom, Eleanor, used to be at every meeting. Nobody's seen her since Maggie moved her into that care facility." My mind was racing now. "Bill, what are you saying?" "I'm saying Maggie's lifestyle doesn't match her income. And that care home is expensive, $8,000 a month. The math ain't right." That same night, Emma was digging through Grandpa's old paperwork for a school project. She found an amendment in the deed, subsurface mineral rights retained. See attached geological survey. I nearly dropped the paper. "Emma, this means whatever's under this land, it's ours. Oil, gas, minerals, whatever. Helen looked over my shoulder. If there are mineral rights, that explains why someone would want a road right there. The next day, the contractors I'd hired to fix the barn suddenly had conflicts. The reputation of legal trouble was spreading like wildfire. But Emma, sharp as ever, found the original geological survey filed back in 1985. Technical, but the gist was clear. We were sitting on a limestone deposit with rare earth minerals. Estimated value over $3 million. The optimal spot for extraction, right where the county road ran. Bill called me to meet him at County Records 8 a.m. sharp. Bring every scrap of paper, Jack. I've been digging. County Road 47B doesn't exist in any official records before 2019. Someone made it up. And Jack, ask yourself, when did anyone last see Eleanor Henderson in person? I think Maggie's hiding more than a fake road. We spent the next morning deep in the county records basement, old paper and dust everywhere. Bill opened a binder from the 1960s, hand-drawn maps, every road accounted for. No 47B, not anywhere. The first digital trace was 2019, created in the dead of night outside business hours. Bill spread out my grandfather's deeds. Letters, amendments, all confirming our road was private, mineral rights were ours, and the county had tried to buy access and been denied. The 1985 Geological Survey spelled it out. Mineral extraction required heavy equipment, and the only logical access was, you guessed it, our road. Jack, your granddad knew what he had. This is about theft, a systematic scheme to steal mineral rights by faking a road. But who could pull this off, I asked. Who has access to all these records? County commissioners, developers, people with the right friends, Bill said, shaking his head. He pointed to Eleanor Henderson's name, perfect attendance at county meetings until late 2022, then nothing. No record of death, guardianship, or incapacitation. Just vanished. Meanwhile, Maggie started buying houses, taking out loans backed by mineral rights she didn't own. We called Becky Foster, a former county attorney now in private practice. She listened to our story, flipping through the evidence with the look of someone who'd seen too many scams. Jack, this isn't just a property dispute. It's fraud, illegal road designation, mineral rights theft, maybe elder abuse. A GIS specialist, David Wright, checked the GPS database. This road was added manually at 11:47 p.m. March 15, 2019. Not part of any real update. Someone with admin access did it on purpose. Then Emma, bless her heart, uncovered property transactions that lined up exactly with Eleanor's disappearance and Maggie's new wealth. Becky's face was grim as she tallied up quarterly mineral checks, $45,000 apiece, never making it to Eleanor. This isn't just fraud, this is elder abuse on a massive scale. Helen, who'd been skeptical at first, was now our sharpest investigator. She found out Maggie made weekly visits to the care home, always with documents needing signatures. But there was no legal guardianship or power of attorney. Every signature was forged. Becky said if we move too soon, Maggie might move Eleanor out of state. We need evidence and fast. Bill worked his old network asking about Eleanor. No one believed she'd give up control to Maggie, not with their history. We were ready to act. But the next step would change everything for us, for Eleanor, for the entire community. So we figured the only way to get the truth about the road, about the mineral rights, about what Maggie had really done was to see Eleanor Henderson ourselves. Becky Foster, always 2 steps ahead, laid out the plan. We'd pose as a family researching care options, which would let us get inside the Sunset Manor facility and hopefully talk to Eleanor without setting off any alarms. The place was about as fancy as you'd expect for $8,000 a month. Manicured lawns, fountain in the courtyard. The kind of lobby that smells like fresh-baked cookies and lemon cleaner. I played my part, asking the receptionist polite questions, nodding along as Helen and Becky collected brochures on memory care and long-term stays. All the while, I kept glancing around, looking for some sign of Eleanor. The receptionist was pleasant but cautious. When I mentioned Eleanor Henderson's name, she tensed up, telling me about privacy policies, about how they couldn't discuss individual residents. But then, like fate was on our side, a nurse passing by muttered just loud enough for us to hear, "Poor dear, in 217, always worried about her mineral money. Keeps asking if her quarterly checks are coming." That cut through me like ice water. It was real. It was all real. Eleanor hadn't lost her mind. She'd lost control over her own life and her own money, and her daughter was holding the pen. We managed to walk through the common area, and that's where I saw her, Eleanor, smaller now, frail but alert, working on a puzzle by the window. I approached quietly, Becky beside me, heart pounding like I was a kid again, trying to sneak cookies before supper. "Mrs. Henderson," I said softly, "I'm Jack Thompson. My family owns the ranch where you used to attend county meetings." She looked up, her eyes sharp and clear. And for a second, it was like seeing the old Eleanor, the one who used to grill county commissioners over missing dollars in the budget. "Oh, thank goodness someone remembers me," she said. Her voice was thin, but her words were strong. "I've been trying to understand what happened to my mineral rights payments. Maggie promised she was just helping me while I got settled in here, but I haven't seen a check in over a year and a half." Becky and I looked at each other. She was lucid, absolutely lucid. No sign of the dementia Maggie kept whispering about. Eleanor told us quietly how Maggie started bringing her stacks of paperwork, telling her to sign here and there, just insurance forms, medical updates, the usual. She didn't get to read them. Maggie always said there was no time that the nurses needed the documents on file immediately. She'd been told not to worry, not to fuss. But Eleanor remembered her mineral rights. 40 years I paid for that land," she whispered, a tear catching in the wrinkles at the edge of her eye. "That money was for my grandchildren, for scholarships, for emergencies, not for Maggie's houses and new cars." Becky was already texting a handwriting analyst she trusted, sending her photos of the signatures from Eleanor's files. "We're going to get you help, Mrs. Henderson," she said. Meanwhile, David Wright, our tech guy, traced the GPS record changes straight to the county commissioner's office, specifically Commissioner Robert Davidson, who, as it turned out, had been receiving unreported donations from Maggie's LLC. Davidson's office had made the after-hours changes that created County Road 47B out of thin air. The audit trail was as clear as day. Eleanor's memory was razor-sharp on the details. Maggie had been pressuring her for months to sign mineral rights transfers, saying they were for tax purposes, claiming the county needed road access for geological surveys. "I never agreed to sell," Eleanor insisted, her voice steely. "I refused, and then the signatures started showing up anyway." The pieces snapped into place. Maggie had isolated her mother in the facility, forged her signature on mineral rights documents, and was using those rights as collateral for millions in shady development loans. Davidson, the commissioner, was moving county boundaries and road access records to match Maggie's plans for a cut of the action. All the while, Eleanor was left with Medicaid paperwork and just enough confusion in her records to keep her stuck. The evidence was overwhelming: financial records, legal filings, digital logs, and most importantly, Eleanor's own clear-eyed testimony. Becky called for an emergency court injunction right there in the facility lobby. "If we wait," she warned, "Maggie will move her mother to Nevada tonight and we'll lose her." We weren't wrong. That night, as the sun set red behind the barn and the wind whipped across the pasture, I got the call. Sunset Manor's staff had just let Maggie in with a moving van and a stack of transfer papers. Eleanor was crying, begging to stay. I threw on my coat, called Helen and Becky, and we all piled into the truck, hearts hammering. We pulled up to Sunset Manor just after midnight, headlights cutting through the dark. Maggie's Mercedes was parked up front, the white moving van idling beside it, Nevada plates gleaming. Inside, chaos. Maggie shouting, staff wringing their hands. Eleanor hunched in a wheelchair, looking more scared than I had ever seen her. Becky didn't waste time. She showed the staff her emergency court order, then called Judge Harold Pierce on his home line, waking him for a video conference right there in the facility's office. The judge, a no-nonsense man with a reputation for hating bureaucracy, listened quietly as Becky laid out the story. Fake road, forged signatures, stolen mineral rights, elder abuse, and the sudden push to move Eleanor across state lines in the dead of night. Eleanor spoke for herself. "Your Honor, I know exactly what's happening. I want to go home. I never gave Maggie permission to control my money, my property, or my life." That was it. The judge froze. All accounts barred Maggie from taking Eleanor anywhere and ordered a full investigation immediately. Maggie tried to bluster, claiming Eleanor was confused that the doctors had declared her incompetent. But when asked for proof, all she had was a piece of paper from a Nevada clinic no one had ever heard of. The doctor named on the letter confirmed by phone he'd never met Eleanor Henderson. Commissioner Davison himself showed up at 2 in the morning, said he was just trying to help a family in crisis. But when he started making frantic phone calls outside the lobby, it was clear he was really trying to cover his own tracks. The next 48 hours were a blur: lawyers, police, county officials, and finally the FBI. Turns out Maggie's mineral rights scheme was just one piece of a sprawling network operating in 3 states, targeting elderly folks with valuable land and minerals, using corrupt officials to fake road designations and forge property transfers. 23 counties, $47 million in stolen assets, and Eleanor's case had blown the whole thing wide open. Eleanor, who'd been dismissed as a confused old lady, became a symbol of strength overnight. She testified before a packed courthouse, her voice clear, her eyes fierce. "They didn't just steal my money, they stole my daughter. Maggie was a good person once, but greed got her, and she wasn't alone." As the news spread, more families came forward. Dozens of elderly victims, all isolated, all stripped of their rights, all set up to lose everything, while their loving relatives and county officials cashed in. In that same courthouse, as Davidson was led away in cuffs and Maggie broke down in the hallway, Eleanor squeezed my hand. "Thank you for believing me, Jack," she said, "for fighting when I couldn't." The state froze. Maggie's accounts seized her properties and ordered restitution, every dime she'd stolen, plus interest, plus federal time for fraud, elder abuse, and racketeering. Davidson got 15 years, lost everything, and became a warning for every small-town official tempted by easy money. But it wasn't just about punishment. Eleanor insisted that her recovered mineral royalties, over $180,000 a year, go to fund college scholarships and a 24-hour elder protection hotline. "Let something good come from all this evil," she said. Our community rallied like I'd never seen before. Transparency meetings, oversight boards, honest budgeting, and regular check-ins for our most vulnerable neighbors. We rebuilt trust one conversation at a time. Emma's essay about how my family saved a grandmother won state and national awards. She got a full ride to law school, specializing in elder rights. Helen started volunteering with local seniors, helping them check their deeds and bank statements just in case. And me, I still run cattle down that same road now, named Henderson Memorial Road, in honor of the woman who wouldn't let herself be erased. It's private, but the gate's open for any neighbor who needs help. Eleanor, well, she never let Maggie visit again, but she forgave her anyway. "Hate's too heavy for a grandmother to carry," she'd say, sipping coffee on our porch. 6 months later, she started the Henderson Foundation for Elder Protection, using her own story to educate and empower seniors across America. Her autobiography, The Grandmother Who Stopped Organized Crime, became a national bestseller, every penny going back into the community. The annual Protection Day event brought together thousands of seniors, kids, officials, all vowing to never let what happened to Eleanor happen again. 3 years on, our county's changed. We're no longer the place where bad things happen quietly. We're the place where justice gets done loudly and for all to see. Every morning I walk that road, sometimes with Eleanor, sometimes alone. The horses graze in the mist, just like before. But now I know what my grandfather meant by hidden value. It wasn't just the minerals or the land. It was the lesson: protect each other. Stand up when the world wants you quiet. Never ever let them steal your voice. The road still runs through my ranch, but now it connects us all, neighbors, advocates, protectors. It's not just a boundary, it's a promise. And I'll keep it for as long as I'm able, because I've seen what happens when we look away. You ever sit on your porch after a storm and just listen? That's how those first months felt once the dust settled. The chaos of Maggie's arrest, Davidson's fall from grace, and Eleanor's return to her own house, it all left this strange quiet. But it was a different kind of quiet than before. There was a charge in the air, like the whole community was holding its breath, waiting to see what we'd do next. Funny thing is, when you live through something that big, nobody really knows what comes after justice. They never tell you what to do when the villain's gone, but the damage is still there, deep in the bones of your home and your heart. Eleanor, bless her, never wanted pity. She moved right back into her little white house at the end of our road, her granddaughter Jennifer flying in from Oregon to be with her every day. Jennifer was gentle, practical. She brought Eleanor her favorite magazines, baked her oatmeal cookies, and let her choose her own grocery list. For the first time in years, Eleanor had her checkbook back, her house keys, even the old wind-up clock her late husband had fixed so many times. But she wasn't the same woman who'd walked into that memory care facility. Something had changed. She was softer in some ways, more willing to let people help, but sharper too. Like she'd decided the only way to keep her freedom was to teach others how not to lose theirs. Every Thursday, she hosted what she called Wisdom Circle's seniors, neighbors. Even a few local kids all sitting around her dining table learning how to read bank statements, spot a forged signature, and say no to anyone, even family who tried to take more than they gave. I'd drop by sometimes bringing eggs or apples from the ranch just to hear her stories. She'd joke, "If I can outsmart Maggie, I can teach anybody to balance a checkbook." And you know what? She did. We had seniors who'd never touched a computer now tracking their assets online, calling their grandkids to say, "I want to talk about the will while I'm still kicking, not after." It was awkward at first, sure, but real more honest than anything I'd seen in the 30 years I'd lived here. Helen, for her part, dove into advocacy like she was born for it. She'd seen firsthand how close we'd come to losing everything, not just our property, but our place in this community. She started organizing quarterly clinics with the sheriff's department, teaching families how to have the hard conversations before a crisis, how to check on your neighbor, how to recognize the difference between help and control. She got the high schoolers involved too, turning Emma's idea of a ledger lab into a Saturday event. Kids would bring in old deeds from their parents, learn what a mineral clause meant, even role play, what to say if someone tried to pressure them into signing something they didn't understand. Our ranch changed too. The horseboarding business bounced back better than before. Folks who'd turned away out of fear now came back because they trusted us, because they knew we wouldn't look the other way if something smelled wrong. Emma took to writing our motto, "Integrity attracts quality relationships," on the inside of the barn door, so you'd see it every dawn when you went out for feed. Funny thing, reputation takes years to build and seconds to lose, but with enough grit you can get it back, sometimes stronger than before. The community changed in ways you wouldn't believe unless you lived through it. The monthly Transparency Tuesday meetings became a ritual. You couldn't run for dog catcher without sitting through one. 95% of residents showed up ready to ask hard questions about the budget development elder services. No more backroom deals. All the county meetings got live streamed and archived so even the homebound could watch from their kitchen table. The Henderson Act passed statewide, making it mandatory for banks to flag any big transactions on accounts held by seniors over 75. Adult Protective Services got more funding, more training too, so they'd know what to look for. We even had volunteers doing wellness checks during storm season, making sure every senior had heat groceries and a working phone. Helen painted a sign for the volunteer hub notice, "Verify, then help." Meanwhile, the mineral rights income, every dime Maggie tried to steal, went right back into the community. Eleanor insisted on it. 70% of the annual royalties funded college scholarships, and 30% paid for the new elder protection services. Every quarter there'd be a public vote on how to use the funds. You want to see a room full of seniors fight, watch them debate whether to upgrade the community van or add a second scholarship for social work students. Those were the best kind of arguments. Nobody lost, everybody won. Emma's essay about how my family saved a grandmother was framed and hung in the school lobby. She graduated top of her class, went to law school on a full ride from Eleanor's scholarship, and specialized in, you guessed it, elder rights. Her first job after the bar, helping rewrite the very laws that had almost cost us everything. And Maggie? She did 6 years in federal prison. She sent a letter once from behind bars, said she'd lost her way, that greed crept up slow, until it felt normal to lie, to forge, to betray your own mother. She never asked for forgiveness, but Eleanor gave it anyway, said she hoped Maggie could teach others from inside, so maybe nobody else's family would go through what we did. Davidson. Well, he got 15 years. No parole, no fancy lawyers, no more influence. His fall triggered a wave of reforms. Term limits for commissioners, mandatory financial disclosure, citizen review boards for every major county decision. The old way of doing business, quiet backdoor handshakes and hush money that died with Davidson's career. But the biggest ripple came from Eleanor herself. After everything she'd survived, she wrote a book, The Grandmother Who Stopped Organized Crime. It shot up the bestseller list, every penny going into the new Elder Protection Fund. She toured 23 states, visited over 100 senior centers, teaching workshops on spotting scams, organizing families, and building a support system that actually works. The Henderson Foundation for Elder Protection grew out of that first spark, first in our county, then in the whole state. Eleanor's royalties seeded it, but donations poured in from everywhere. Grateful families, law students, advocacy groups, even a few corporate sponsors trying to clean up their image. The foundation launched a 24-hour hotline, funded legal clinics, sent mobile teams into rural areas, and helped over 300 elderly folks reclaim their rights, their money, and their lives. Federal agents called our county ground zero for the fight against elder exploitation. Congressional hearings brought new laws, new protections. Over $300 million in stolen assets were returned to victims nationwide, all because one grandmother refused to disappear. The anniversary of Eleanor's rescue became our community's proudest holiday. Protection Day, we called it. There'd be speeches, workshops, food trucks, and an oak tree planting by the new Henderson Memorial Road. Kids would decorate signs, seniors would share stories, and just once, the whole county would feel like family. And what about the road? It's still there, still running straight through my ranch. But now it's a model, transparent, honest, managed by a board of neighbors who publish every dollar spent, every pothole filled. User fees, sure, but never enough to make anybody rich, just enough to keep the lights on and the gate safe for the next kid on a bike or grandma with a walker. Sometimes after a big storm, I walk that road with Eleanor. She's slower now, leaning on Jennifer's arm, but sharp as ever. You know, Jack, she'll say they thought they could steal a little old lady's money and nobody would notice. But you noticed. And you didn't look away. I tell her, no, ma'am, it was you who saved us. You taught us what real protection means. It's not about keeping people out. It's about keeping the right folks close and the wrong ones out. As the years roll on, the changes we made stick. More communities send delegations wanting to learn how we did it, how we turned a crime into a legacy. There's always more work to do, more predators out there, more vulnerable folks who need someone in their corner. But now at least we know what to watch for. Now we have each other's backs. And every time I walk that old road, I remember what started as a fight to protect my land turned into a movement to protect our people. That's the kind of legacy worth leaving behind. 6 months after the federal courthouse drama, with the TV trucks long gone and the gawkers moving on to the next small-town scandal, you might think things would quiet down for good. But out here, real healing doesn't happen in a headline. It happens in the little things day after day, sometimes without anybody noticing but you. Eleanor settled into her rhythms. Some days she'd sit in her sunroom quilting, listening to the radio, and other times she'd be out on her porch with Jennifer, greeting neighbors as they passed, calling out advice about everything from flower beds to financial fraud. She was a fixture again, no longer that poor woman in the nursing home, but Miss Eleanor, the lady who started it all. Her Thursday wisdom circles became a sort of lifeline for more people than you'd think. At first, it was just folks from the neighborhood, then some from nearby towns. And after the book tour, well, people would drive in from 2 counties over just for a chance to hear her talk straight about standing up for yourself. It wasn't just about money either. She'd say, if someone tries to shame you into silence, that's how they win. Tell someone. If you're scared, tell 2 someones. Don't go quiet. That's how we all lose. It was more than advice, it was a call to action. And people listened. Jennifer, who'd come out to help her grandmother, ended up staying for good. She took a job at the community college teaching social work, but it was really Eleanor's foundation that became her life's work. She built systems, phone trees for check-ins, online portals for reporting suspicious activity, even a mobile legal clinic staffed by law students and retired attorneys. If you were an elder in our part of the state, you suddenly had an army at your back. Helen, meanwhile, took her experience and turned it outward. She became a state-level advocate for elder protection. Her practical, plain-spoken way made her a favorite on talk radio and at civic groups. She worked with banks to make sure they didn't ignore red flags, got the sheriff's office to put an elder liaison on every major investigation, and even wrote pamphlets, not just for lawyers, how to spot a bad deal that ended up in libraries and doctors' offices all over the county. Emma's law school journey became a source of pride for the whole community. When she graduated, Eleanor was front and center, tears on her cheeks, clapping harder than anyone. Emma's commencement speech about how the law should protect the people who built the country, not just those who inherit it, ended up reprinted in national magazines. And our family? Well, things were different. Not easier, but clearer. We made it a habit to talk about hard things, to keep no secrets, to share responsibility. Helen and I argued sometimes, but it was different now. No more resentment hiding under the surface, just two people pushing each other to do right. The ranch prospered. Clients came back because they trusted us, and word spread that if you boarded your horse at the Thompson place, you were dealing with people who stood up for what mattered. Our motto, integrity attracts quality relationships, became not just words on a door, but the way we lived. Each season brought its own work fences to mend horses, to train calves to doctor. But now there was always room at the table for one more, always a cup of coffee or a slice of pie for someone needing advice. The barn wasn't just for animals anymore. It hosted clinics, community gatherings, even the occasional birthday party for one of the seniors Eleanor had helped. Every year on Protection Day, we'd gather under that oak tree by Henderson Memorial Road, the leaves bigger and shadier each time. The sign at the base read, "In memory of trust betrayed, in honor of community restored." We'd hold a moment of silence for the elders who didn't get saved in time, then cheer for the students heading to college on Eleanor's scholarship. There'd be a barbecue, kids running wild, seniors swapping stories, and always Eleanor sitting in her favorite lawn chair, waving like a queen, her laughter ringing out. The foundation grew in ways nobody could have predicted. It funded studies at the state university, created an online curriculum for elder abuse prevention, even launched a pilot program that sent social work interns to rural communities across 5 states. One year, they even got a federal grant, $12 million, earmarked for elder protection. We watched, amazed, as something that started at one kitchen table rippled out, changing lives across the country. Maggie was released from prison after serving 6 years. The court ordered her to attend counseling and do community service with an elder abuse prevention group. She was barred from seeing her mother, but she sent one last letter, a long handwritten apology, not asking for forgiveness, but hoping her story would keep someone else from falling for the lie that family means you can do what you want. Eleanor read it, nodded, and tucked it into her scrapbook, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder of how easy it is to lose your way. Davidson's disgrace led to reforms up and down the state: term limits, mandatory transparency, citizen oversight on every major land deal. Other counties sent delegations to learn from us, to copy what worked, to avoid the traps we'd stumbled into. The biggest lesson: trust is a living thing. It needs tending. If you ignore it, it'll rot. But if you show up, tell the truth, and hold each other accountable, it'll grow into something strong enough to protect everybody, young and old. Eleanor never let her fame change her. If anything, she used it as a shield for others. When her book became a bestseller, she donated every cent to the foundation. When the National Elder Rights Conference asked her to give the keynote, she made them promise to fund scholarships for social work students. When the local paper wanted to run her photo on the front page, she insisted the other women from the Wisdom Circle stand with her. "This is not a one-woman show," she'd say. "It takes a village to keep the wolves at bay." And that's what we became. A village that looked out for its own. On the third anniversary of Protection Day, the county unveiled a new community center named after Eleanor Henderson. She stood at the podium, frail but unbowed, and said, "We're only as strong as the hands we hold. If you see someone falling, grab on. If you see someone lost, go looking. Don't let pride or fear keep you from asking for help or offering it." She led us in, planting another oak by the front door, her hands steady as she patted the earth. "This tree will outlive me, but let's make sure the spirit behind it never dies." Sometimes late at night, I'd sit on my porch and think about everything we'd been through: the road, the sign, the fine, the betrayal, the fight, the redemption. I'd hear the faint sound of Eleanor's laughter drifting across the pasture, feel the warm weight of Helen's hand in mine, see Emma's future stretching out like the highway beyond the trees. And I'd know deep down that none of it was wasted, that every struggle, every sleepless night, every risk we took to protect what mattered, it all added up to something you can't buy, can't fake, can't steal: a community that remembers, forgives, and keeps each other safe. You know, sometimes the road home is the one you fight hardest to keep. But when you finally win it back, it's not just yours. It belongs to everyone who helped you along the way. That's the real legacy. That's the lesson I'll carry for the rest of my days. You know, I used to think the only stories worth telling were the ones that happened in your own backyard. But after all this, I realized how one family's fight in a forgotten corner of the map can ripple out, catching up strangers you'll never meet, and changing the way folks think about right and wrong far beyond a fence line. Eleanor's story. Our story didn't end with the oak tree or even with the foundation. It grew the way truth does until it reached places none of us ever dreamed. That first winter after the foundation launched, letters started arriving, handwritten notes, emails, even the occasional bouquet of wildflowers from seniors in Maine, Oklahoma, California. They all said a version of the same thing: "I saw you on the news. I read about your fight. You made me realize I wasn't crazy to trust my gut." Some were simple thank yous. Some were desperate cries for help. All of them in their own way proof that the battle we'd fought was bigger than a little road or a single set of mineral rights. The foundation became a model copied by counties and small towns from coast to coast. Mobile elder law clinics popped up in farm towns and city neighborhoods. Training videos based on Eleanor's workshops made their way into police academies and bank onboarding programs. There were billboards in places I'd never been showing a portrait of Eleanor, smiling chin up beside the words, "Protect your elders. Ask, listen, act." Legislatures took notice. The Henderson Act, first passed in our state, ended up sparking a wave of similar laws across 15 states. Mandatory reporting for big transactions on senior accounts, annual check-ins, legal aid for elders in disputes, community education on fraud, and power of attorney. Some folks grumbled about bureaucracy, but after seeing what had happened to Eleanor and so many others, most realized this wasn't about red tape, it was about dignity. Eleanor, well, she never slowed down. Not really. At 91, she was the keynote speaker at the National Elder Rights Conference in Washington. She stood at the podium in a blue dress Jennifer had picked out, voice clear as a bell. "If I can get bamboozled by my own kin and bounce back," she said, "there's hope for every one of us." She spoke about her life, the good years, the hard ones, the moment she nearly lost everything, and how community, not just courts or lawyers or government, was what pulled her back. Reporters followed her around hungry for sound bites, but she kept bringing it back to basics. Don't wait for trouble to knock on your door, she'd tell them. Call your grandmother, visit your neighbor, double-check the paperwork, and if you're a decent person with a skill, volunteer. It takes all kinds to build a safety net. At home, the community center thrived. The foundation's annual Protection Day was now a regional event. Kids ran games outside, law students gave talks on power of attorney, seniors swapped stories in the shade of the oaks. Each year, another class of scholarship kids stood up to thank Eleanor and the donors, telling how they'd used their degrees to protect the vulnerable. A handful even came back to work for the foundation, the cycle beginning again. Jennifer and her small army of staffers grew the hotline into a national resource. By the second year, it had logged more than 5,000 calls, resulting in hundreds of interventions, some simple, some life-changing. There were stings arrests, but also quiet moments where a volunteer helped a grandparent switch banks or revoke a suspicious power of attorney before real damage could be done. Emma passed the bar, came home, and took over as the foundation's in-house counsel. She started pushing for even bolder reforms, automatic freezes on large transfers for seniors over a certain age, community boards to review major land or mineral sales, regular mailings explaining the latest scams. She was tireless, but you could see how proud Eleanor was, how the fight had passed to a new generation, and how her pain had seeded purpose for someone she loved. Helen traveled the state as an advocate, training law enforcement and bank employees to recognize red flags, but always circling back home to our porch, her laughter more rooted than ever. She started a regular column in the local paper, part advice, part stories, part gentle reminders to check in on the folks who taught you how to ride a bike or bake a pie. I watched her become a kind of quiet legend in her own right. As for me, I went back to ranch work, but nothing ever looked the same. I got asked to speak sometimes at schools, at meetings, even at the legislature once. I'd always end the same way. All I did was stand up for what was right. You can too. I kept up the habit of checking in on neighbors, especially the old-timers, and found a quiet satisfaction in the knowledge that together we'd built something lasting. The Henderson model, they called it on the evening news, a way for rural communities to keep each other safe without losing the freedom and dignity that comes from small-town living. Over 100 communities by the 5th year had adopted some version of our protocol's annual financial audits. For seniors, public votes on mineral and timber leases. Mandatory transparency for all public works. The annual oak tree planting grew into a tradition, a living reminder that you can't erase the past, but you can plant something better for the future. Each sapling was named for an elder saved by the hotline or a student who'd received a scholarship. By the 10th year, you could see a green belt running from the community center all the way to Eleanor's old porch, a living legacy you could touch and feel. Eleanor's autobiography became a national bestseller. She donated all the proceeds, over $500,000, to the foundation, which in turn created an endowment to fund elder protection work long after we were all gone. She was featured on national news, honored by Congress, and given a medal by the state governor. But her real pride was quieter, seeing Emma pass a bill into law, seeing Jennifer get a letter from a grandparent she'd helped, watching a new crop of college students head out to build a better world. Maggie, for her part, kept her distance. The no-contact order remained in place, and she never tried to challenge it. Sometimes I'd hear from folks who saw her volunteering at elder abuse prevention events in another state, her way maybe of trying to pay back a debt that can never truly be paid. Davidson died in prison. His name became a kind of warning proof that even the powerful fall when their schemes turn rotten. And yet, the true ending of this story isn't tragedy or punishment, it's hope. It's a whole community, maybe even a whole country, remembering that the measure of our worth isn't found in bank accounts or county records, but in how we protect those who can't protect themselves. 3 years after the courthouse showdown, I still walk that road in the morning. I see kids walk into school, elderly folks on their daily strolls, neighbors waving as they pass. The sun comes up, lighting the oaks and the pasture, and I feel the pulse of something bigger than a ranch, bigger than my own story. I think about what Eleanor taught us, that true boundaries aren't fences or gates, but the invisible lines we draw to keep out harm and keep in compassion. And that sometimes to find your way home, you have to stand your ground even when it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. Eleanor's foundation is strong, but the real work is never finished. There will always be another elder, another scam, another storm on the horizon. But I know now beyond any doubt that we have the tools, the will, and the heart to face whatever comes next. And as the wind rustles through those oak leaves, I hear her voice, gentle but firm. We built this. Now keep it safe for yourself, for your family, for everyone who comes after. Yeah, that's the road I walk every single day. Funny how a single road, just a strip of gravel through a patch of pasture, could end up changing the course of so many lives. When I look back, it's never just the big moments I remember. It's all the little ones, Helen's tired hands squeezing mine. After another long meeting, Emma poring over law books late into the night, Eleanor's steady voice calming a scared neighbor over the phone. Even Maggie, somewhere far off, paying her debt the only way she can. The last years of Eleanor's life were full, and I mean that in the best way. She got to see her dream bloom, real scholarships, real changes in the law, real people standing up for each other. Every Sunday she'd sit on her porch with Jennifer, tea in hand, and wave as families walked by. Some old friends, some newcomers who'd moved here because they heard this was a place that looked out for its own. On her 93rd birthday, the whole town turned out at the community center. There was music, food, 3 generations playing games on the lawn. Emma, home for the weekend, made a toast to the grandmother who taught us all to fight back and to love harder, to the community she built, and to the future we all share. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Even old Bill Mitchell, cane in hand, dabbed his eyes and muttered, "Never seen anything like it, Jack. Never will again." When Eleanor passed that autumn quietly in her sleep, Jennifer at her side, the news ran in papers from here to the Capitol. The governor called, senators sent letters, even a message from the White House. But what mattered most was what happened right here. Neighbors brought flowers, kids drew chalk hearts on her sidewalk, and folks, tough, private, not known for tears ranchers, stood up at the memorial and promised to keep her work alive. They meant it too. The Henderson Foundation kept growing new branches in other states, partnerships with colleges, thousands of volunteers. Emma took the reins, guiding the next generation. Jennifer stayed close, running the wisdom circles and mentoring young advocates. Helen traveled to Washington, testifying before Congress on elder protection laws. Even I found myself busier than ever, sitting on oversight boards, giving talks to other small towns, reminding them that you don't need to be rich or powerful to make a stand. Each year, Protection Day got bigger. The oaks along the road grew taller, and a new tradition took root before the picnic, before the speeches. A moment of silence. Someone would read Eleanor's favorite line, words she'd scribbled in the margin of her first speech, now etched in bronze on the Memorial Road sign. True community means no one is forgotten, no one is abandoned, and no one is left to fight alone. I'd look around and see the faces, young old black-white families who'd feuded over fence lines now working side by side. Kids who'd been scholarship babies now back as lawyers, teachers, cops, and advocates. Seniors who used to be scared now running circles around the younger crowd, sharp as tacks and proud of it. And every so often a new family would move in, someone would fall on hard times, or a storm would blow through and leave a mess. Each time the community rallied, meals delivered, repairs, made rides, given rights defended. That's the legacy Eleanor left us. Not just laws or buildings or even money, but a living network of hands reaching out over and over to lift someone up. Sometimes I still walk the road alone at dawn, mist curling over the fields, a hawk circling in the pink light. I think of how close we came to losing it all, how fragile trust is, and how fiercely it needs protecting. I remember my grandfather's words about hidden value, and finally I understand. The real treasure isn't buried under the land. It's all around us, in every promise kept, every neighbor defended, every story told to the next generation. And when I pass the Memorial Road sign, I pause, touch the bronze plaque, and whisper, "Thank you." Not just to Eleanor, but to everyone who stood up, who fought, who refused to let silence win. Because the truth is, the fight never really ends. But neither does the legacy, so long as someone remembers to care. So if you're out there listening, wondering if your voice matters, believe me, it does. The day you choose to stand up for what's right, to protect someone more vulnerable, to say, "Not on my watch," that's the day the story turns. That's the day the legacy grows. And if you ever find yourself driving down a country road lined with oaks, think of Eleanor Henderson and know you're never alone.